It's midnight. Vampire hour again. There are strangers in a small town. Strange things have started happening. Connected somehow to the Marston house. The house where Hubie Marston died. The house that one stranger's bought. The house that another stranger is writing about. There's a store opening up in Salem's lot. And we have things to say about it. Rick, what say you?
I think this is a film that, watching this last night, I was going back to my childhood and I was thinking about the films that have influenced me and the movies and how they've played out in my life. And watching this film, I realized that I had missed out on a great deal of horror when I was a kid because I was just simply too afraid of it. And Salem's Lot is a film that I had never seen. I knew it was a vampire story, and I knew there was a Nosferatu-like vampire in it, but I wasn't familiar with the novel. I wasn't familiar with the themes or the way this particular story played out. How it was basically a town being overrun by evil and slowly breeding vampires. I wasn't aware of that. So in a sense, I went into this film about as blind as you can go into a movie, having only seen maybe a trailer. That being said, you know, and this is kind of before trailers gave away everything. All you really knew was it was a vampire story. People were dying. There was a bit of a love story there, and David Soul from Starsky and Hutch was the lead. But I gotta say, I was watching this movie and I was really, really involved. That, like, you know, literally, when people say literally, they don't really mean literally. I was moving forward in the chair. I was on the edge of my seat. I was watching this, wondering what the hell's going to happen next, and really excited. I was really invested over the 3 hours that it took to get through this movie, and I was, I don't know, I was kind of pissed off at myself that I had never seen it, that I had never made time to see it. Even when I picked it up on Blu-ray, I think it's been sitting on my shelf for about 10 years now, just having never made time to watch it, never, as is the case with so many films. But I was really impressed with a lot of it, and I realized, TV movie or not, and you got to remember, this is a period when TV movies, horror is already a ghetto genre. It's already a in the ghetto of genres, not respected, not valued, not looked at as art. Subsequently, so much of what has come out is either blood and gore or just cheap thrills. And as I was watching this, I was realizing that's not the case here. This is actual tension, and the knowledge that it's directed by Tobe Hooper makes me realize Texas Chainsaw Massacre wasn't a simple mistake or accident, or it makes you realize the true importance of a director who knows the ins and outs of the genre and what can be done with it. Because where Texas Chainsaw Massacre was violent and offensive in its violence to a lot of people, it still had the freedom of being for the theater. Grindhouse at that. There was a lot more that could be gotten away with. This film being an ABC or NBC or CBS movie of the week, a 4-hour miniseries broken up into 2 episodes, this has restraints. But I don't think that the restraints at any point ever hold back the film. And possibly help it. I loved watching this. This is one of the great horror movie watches that I've seen in a long time. I wish I could have started it at midnight. I wish I could have watched it into the early morning and been a little bit more freaked out. But I started in the midday after work, and even that creeped me out. Not even creeped me out, just created a source of tension that I wasn't really familiar with in these kind of movies. So I come to this as a complete novice to the material, to what Tobe Hooper achieved, and I'm really interested in what your relationship with this film is. Were you a kid when you watched this? Did you rent it on? I mean, was there even a video release of this? What did you catch it on an old UHF station on a Friday, Saturday night?
I don't remember when I first saw this.
Were you a kid though? Do you know that you were a kid?
No, I wasn't a little kid. No, I never saw it on TV.
Can you imagine being a fucking little kid watching this? 8?
Yeah.
Oh, that would have freaked me out. That would have creeped me the fuck out.
I remember watching as a kid. I remember seeing. I think it was Omen 2. And it was like fucking spoiler alert. But there's a I think it's Omen 2 where there's a moment where a big rig, there's like crows attacking this lady, and then the big rig runs her over or something like that. I think that's the one where they're in a room that fills with sand, I think also. I remember seeing that as a kid and it just being on. And I remember there are snippets of I remember seeing parts of Kiss of the Spider Woman when I was a kid.
Did we go see that in the theater, you and I?
We did, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I remember like certain things.
Yeah.
And of the TV miniseries, I remember my mom used to love the Thornbirds.
I think all moms loved the Thornbirds.
Yeah,
they were all in love with Richard Chamberlain. They didn't realize.
Well,
that's cheap, but fuck it. Google it if you don't know. I never saw it, so yeah, that was a big one for you. Yeah,
I used to every year when it would come out, and I just wanted to see that witch. And Shogun was a big one too. Richard Chamberlain also, right?
Yeah.
This one, I think it was earlier than the other ones. And yeah, I never saw it.
Yeah.
But I had seen this. I don't know if I rented it from the library. I don't even remember. But I've seen this before. But watching it again, I was like, oh, there are so many elements that parallel Needful Things.
Yeah, I saw that too. I was thinking about that.
Bonnie Bedelia. A foreigner with a nice car, dressed well, very proper European, coming into a small town to open up a shop that seems like it shouldn't belong there. Because who in this small town is going to buy? Well, this particular store is an antique store in Salem's Lot. In Needful Things, I think the town is Castle Rock, because it's that whole thing. And I know this is, I'm not one of those people. I have a good friend who he could tell us the connection between everything because he's a huge fan of the Stephen King universe and of the Stephen King like Dark Tower and all that shit. And I know some of our listeners also are into that. So I don't know those connections or how he went back and like redrew that map or whatever. but I think it's called Castle Rock. And
well, Castle Rock is the production company that Rob Reiner and
right,
his
why is it
partner,
called that?
yeah, they started it with and I think their earliest film was Stand By Me, which is an adaptation of Stephen King's The Body, and the town that was set in was Castle Rock. So Castle Rock begat Shawshank Redemption, and a number of other films that were in that Rob Reiner. Reiner has always been a big. He's pulled from the Stephen King writing chest many times. That, Shawshank, Misery, The Majestic, a lot of that, The Mist, all of that stuff. All of those are Castle Rock films, I believe.
Yeah, and I don't know if all of them in the books are set in that town or not, but the idea is it's this all-American northeastern town.
Yeah.
And in that film, in that story, it's the devil who's coming in to set up not an antique shop, but a kind of just like a collectible type shop. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be, whatever your desire is, that he sells it, right? Because he's the devil. And how everything starts to devolve in that town because townspeople turn against townspeople, etc. Here, it goes back to the epidemic element of the vampire. So for me, it was like it's a TV movie, but it's such a slow burn because it's longer, mm-hmm. And it just feels nostalgic. And I have Needful Things nostalgia because I used to rent that movie all the time. And so it connects me to that. Even with the awkward cutting where you're like, oh, this is a commercial break.
You know what? It didn't become apparent until I was so into it that I didn't really notice that until I think middle of the second hour.
Mm.
I wasn't. I thought that the commercial cuts were a little bit more seamless until. But when I started noticing them, I couldn't ignore them.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, it was so. What Tobe Hooper was doing was so overwhelming that it just didn't matter to me. I loved it. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then let's talk about the cast before we go even deeper. Let's talk about the cast because it's a lot of times you see people in a film like this, and you're like, oh, I know that guy. Or you go on to see that guy in something else that you're more familiar with. So the film stars David Soul. Talk about David Soul. You mentioned Starsky and Hutch.
David Soul was.
I think he's great.
I think he's. Yeah, I like him in this. I think he really brings a level of a guy you want to get behind in this type of situation. That he's curious. He plays this writer that comes back to his birthplace, although he left it when he was like 10 years old when there was a murder and like a smaller version of what starts to happen here. He returns to this town to dig into the history, and up until this point, David Soul had been one half of Starsky and Hutch. I didn't watch Starsky and Hutch, so I don't remember. I don't know which one he was, but as far as I know, he was big on that show. That made him, and he did a number of TV movies and other guest appearances throughout the 70s and 80s. Of the two, I think he might still be alive. I don't know which one is still alive. But his career didn't go a whole lot further. But it was also a time when TV stars were TV stars, movie stars were movie stars, and the two didn't intermingle, and you couldn't go from one to the other or back and forth. With very rare exceptions, you would have movie stars that would star on TV, but it was very rare. That was David Soul. I love him in this thing. He seems authentic. He seems real. He seems like he comes from that place and he's inhabiting this world in a really honest and nuanced way. I thought his performance was really good in this. His love interest is Bonnie Bedelia, who, as I watched, I was taken back. Do you know who Mary Stuart Masterson is?
Yeah, I know the name, but I can't picture her face.
She was in a movie called Some Kind of Wonderful. She played the tomboy who was who was best friends with Eric Stoltz's character. You know, Wrong Side of the Tracks. Eric Stoltz is in love with the prettiest girl in town, Leah Thompson. Mary Stuart Masterson did a lot of character acting in the late 80s, early 90s. Anyway, Bonnie Bedelia and her look almost exactly alike as young women.
Really?
Yeah, and as I watched this film, I couldn't get it out of my head. I started to wonder, are they related in some way? Is she her mother? Because they look that much alike to me. And maybe I'm projecting onto it, but part of the thing was that I was in love with Mary Stuart Masterson when I was in high school. And looking at Bonnie Bedelia, I think Bonnie Bedelia looks great in this film. And she plays wholesome, somewhat virginal, naive, Eastern, whatever. You know, she's damsel in distress, but at the same time, she's kind of she's a little bit more independent, and there was just something about her that I thought worked. James Mason. Now,
oh yeah,
James Mason was a character who I don't know if I guess Mason was a star at one point, but he always came off to me as a more higher end character actor, where you would see him in films in supporting roles, villains sometimes. He was in Kubrick's Lolita. He was in The Verdict. I think he was the opposing counsel. But he had I don't know how to describe it. He just had an aura of dignity and a certain kind of, I guess we're conditioned to look at the British actors as top tier, more distinguished, a certain level of I'm not sure.
More elegant.
Yeah,
more
definitely more elegant.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the Shakespearean tradition of training. So Mason had that, and he's an older man in this film, but he's an older man with class and dignity and a lot of and I guess he's playing the Jonathan Starker role in this film, right? Because he's definitely not Renfield. I was trying to. It's weird.
Like Jonathan Harker?
Jonathan Harker.
No,
yeah.
He's Renfield.
Is he Renfield? Because I always felt like Renfield was destroyed by the Lord, by in a weird way. Renfield was always, well, in the original in the original Dracula, the Todd Browning Dracula with Bela Lugosi, wasn't Renfield Dwight Fry? Kind of smallish and eating bugs and that kind of shit. Yeah.
He's Tom Waits in the 90s version. Yeah.
Well, Mason is definitely no Tom Waits in this film.
Well, yes,
you know what I mean?
That's right. But I mean, like, that's the thing is, if we're going to use, if for example, I have a book. It's called "Our Vampires Ourselves," by a woman named Nina Orbach. She touches on. I have a quote that I want to pull out in regards to this. But she talks about Salem's Lot, but she talks about all kinds of different vampire films and stories and novels. And she talks about how in this one there is no Van Helsing, in the same way that you talked about, or you have in this series or last week or whatever, you talked about, a lot of times vampire films, they set up the vampire as this kind of monster, and then there has to be a Van Helsing type character who has to destroy it. Some of the things that she writes, I'm kind of like, well, someone still takes that role because you do have someone who's reading up about fucking vampires. You do have someone who's the little boy who's into horror, who basically is a stand-up for everyone who listens to this podcast, and also us who do the podcast. He's this kid who's into theater, and his parents are like, why are you into this shit? And he's like, that's just how I am. Close the door on your way out, please. And he has pictures of monsters on his wall, and he knows through his research, basically, that when the vampire appears to him, he uses a toy cross to drive him back. And one thing that she says that I do agree with is that he drives him back because he believes.
Yeah.
He drives the vampire back because of his belief, because he's invested in this type of world. But in that sense, he is a Van Helsing, or he is like a frog, one of the Frog brothers from Lost Boys. Now, going back to the framework of kind of like using Dracula as a template, the Renfield is basically any person who is the accomplice of the vampire, anyone who is the keeper or the familiar, as the one character refers to herself as that in What We Do in the Shadows. The person who assists the vampire in terms of like the daily living of not the daily living, because obviously the vampire is not living, but the unliving, in terms of like interacting between the vampire and society and the victims and all of that. James Mason's character as Richard Straker, is supposedly the front face of this business partnership between himself and the mysterious Mr. Barlow. And he's like, oh, well, Mr. Barlow's on a business trip. Mr. Barlow's not here right now, but Mr. Barlow, he'll like you and you'll like him. In the meantime, I'm setting up for him. And James Mason, in this small town environment, he may not be eating bugs, but the idea is, if you move it to another kind of, if you move it to, let's say, a story of like occultism or something like that, he's like the occultist trying to make a deal with the devil. Because the idea is that, why would he do this? Well, the only reason why he would do it is because he also wants to become a vampire. Because he wants that power. Because and even if he can't have power, he wants to be adjacent to power. And remember, we see that politics. Why would the people, some of them eat these metaphorical bugs and some of them don't? And it's like, why are these people subjugating themselves to that? Some of them you would say, well, they're just as fucked up. Yes. But it's because if they can't be in power themselves, at least they can be close to it, with the promise that, like, I don't know, maybe there is a chance for me to rise up as well. James Mason is that character. He's trying to, in the Ninth Gate, Frank Langella, who also played Dracula at some point, he wants to summon the devil. He wants power. He wants whatever the devil has to offer. Now, to these outsiders, if Salem's Lot is basically America, in the micro, it's a microcosm of America. It's a small town. a place wary of outsiders. Neighbors know each other. There's a suspicion beneath all of the normalcy. James Mason is, as Orbach describes, identified with un-American attributes of, and these are her words, wit, homosexuality, and old fine things. There is that layer of this kind of homophone. I haven't read the book, so I don't know if it's how much they took from that, or if that's a heavier theme. Orbach doesn't really go into that aspect of it. And again, I haven't read the original. I'm gonna have to get a copy that I like the look of on my shelf and read it. Or at least read it from the library first and then see what's up. But the point is that he describes, he's basically retiring with his business partner, and they have this house, and it's kind of like, what are people, especially in a fucking, like, in a small town, gonna think? Even the other stranger, the main character, David Soul's character of Ben Mears, when Bonnie Bedelia's character is talking to her mother, because now they've started like talking or whatever, she's like, oh, he's a writer. Oh, he's done his second book or whatever. What's his first book about? She says, Two Men.
I love that moment. Well, it's not that kind of book.
Yeah, that's the
God damn.
Yeah, and the mom's just like, two men? Like, I mean, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is about two men.
Yeah.
But it's like that she went, Batman and Robin is about, you know what I mean? But she went like there with it, you know?
Yeah. That was a great moment.
And so, James Mason is perfect for all of that, because in a kind of salt of the earth, from that kind of perspective, you have think of even Jaws. You have these people in this small town. You have like regular people, but then and these people are all like in Jaws, for example.
Yeah.
Your regular people, they're also familiar with the water to a degree, and they have boats and all this bullshit. But to the shark killer, even these guys are soft. So the way they look at Richard Dreyfuss's character is like, oh, this fucking university guy. But now imagine James Mason with a suit, a dark suit and a dark car and an accent and these airs,
Certainly.
They're going to be, they're not going to say, oh, he's very refined. They're going to say, like, I mean, to put it in like in a 2025 context, it's like gay. You know what I mean? Like that's what it's gonna come down to. LMAO, gay. But like that's the jumping to that conclusion in such a stupid like normie as fuck small town way. And the suspicion behind all of that is not only the fact that he's clearly an outsider, an ultra outsider. It's also, this book was written in the mid-70s.
Yeah.
And Stephen King himself has said, and Orbach quotes him, and I'll read it to illustrate what I'm getting at. Well, this is her. She says, Watergate is a silent but essential collaborator. According to King, its climate of lies shaped Salem's Lot. Now, this is Stephen King. I know that, for instance, in my novel Salem's Lot, the thing that really scared me was not vampires, but the town in the daytime, the town that was empty, knowing that there were things in closets. I mean, side note, remember the idea of this this suspicion of homosexuals. So that's me inserting that there. Things in closets, that there were people tucked under beds, under the concrete pilings of all those trailers. And all the time I was writing that, the Watergate hearings were pouring out of the TV. There were people saying, at that point in time, they were saying, I can't recall. There was money showing up in bags. Howard Baker kept asking, what I want to know is, what did you know and when did you know it? That line haunts me. It stays in my mind. It may be the classic line of the 20th century. What did he know and when did he know it? During that time, I was thinking about secrets, things that have been hidden and were being dragged out into the light. So I think she also herself, this author of this work, talks about kind of like invasion of the body snatchers.
Yeah.
And it becomes kind of like, I saw this meme or whatever about our current times, and it's Kurt Russell from The Thing, and he's like, we don't know who to trust, type of shit. We don't know what's real, type of thing. And it's kind of like, that's our reality now in 2025. Stephen King, through Salem's Lot, is writing about their version of it in the mid 70s. So the film is from the late 70s, and the book is from the mid 70s. And I would be curious to see, I mean, like, imagine James Mason's character going to this town and feeling like, oh, this town's fucked up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Were he not a servant of Mr. Barlow, this fucking nasty ass rat looking vampire? But this town is populated by these George Zunzos, you know what I mean? Like,
well, I think that's the interesting thing, because it's interesting you bring up George Zunza, because his story is peripheral and really unnecessary as far as the drive of the actual movie, but it goes a long way to creating the tension of the community and knowing that there's a man here. And that scene where he stakes out his wife and he's waiting for her to cheat on him. He's pretty sure she's cheating on him with her boss, and they build that up. The wife and Fred Willard playing the I guess the real estate agent in town, who's facilitating a lot of the Barlow Straker business. But that scene where she gets together with him in her home, and Zazonza with the shotgun and a slowly disappearing six-pack, in that old school style where it was hanging off of that rubber. I don't even know if they still do that, but
that shit that kills fucking things and
turtles
animals
and
in the
shit.
ocean.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but it's like hanging, and you can see boom. It's a slow kind of thing where it starts off as maybe 5, and then it's down to 2 at the end, or 1, or it was really cool the way that they did that. And he goes in there and he confronts the two of them. And I'm sitting there. That's the first moment where I started moving forward on the chair, where I was like, oh shit, he's going to kill this motherfucker. And then the reality of it is hitting me, where it's like, no, this isn't the 70s. He's not going to let him kill him on screen. But in my head, I'm still mired in 2000s. And I'm like, oh no, he's going to kill him. He's going to fucking shotgun blast this guy. And I'm divided on whether or not he should, because it's so fucked up, you know? but the way Dzunza plays with them, and for those who don't know George Dzunza, I mean, he was a character actor for years,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he either did one of the Law and Order shows or he did Homicide: Life on the Street. I can't remember which one he did, but he always played like a cop or a regular everyman. And the most famous thing he did was the diner owner in The Deer Hunter. So this is a guy that this is America, white, fat, balding.
He's
Yeah.
Yeah, he's also, not to cut you off, but 90s, he's the guy that sides with Denzel in Crimson Tide.
That's right. Yeah.
He's the sidekick of Michael Douglas in Basic Instinct. He's his partner.
Yeah. He disappears into a lot of films. So it's like, I could name films that he was in and you would be like, oh yeah. And you just named two films, that one of which we've recently watched, where I'm like, oh shit, yeah, Dzunza was in that. I mean, Dzunza had that. He's one of those actors like M. Walsh or J.T. Walsh, who just showed up in movies and made them better without you being aware of how the motherfucker was like cinnamon. It was like, well, I'm trying to imagine something that you don't notice how much better it makes. Cinnamon makes coffee taste a whole hell of a lot better. And that's what Dzunza is to me, where I'm like, I didn't even realize he's there, but goddamn, it's better that he is.
Yeah. And it's one of those faces that you're like, oh, it is like, just like Needful Things is which I think J.T. Walsh, is J.T. Walsh in it?
Yeah, he's in it. I think that's one of his last films.
He's the racetrack guy, right? That's his name, right?
I can't remember what his name. Well, his name is J.T. Walsh. Yeah, I can't remember what he is in that film. I just remember him crying on the phone. I think I killed somebody or something like that.
That's J.T. Walsh, because he's one of those guys that you're like, I don't know this guy's name, but you can say that Needful Things is that kind of film that it has like this great supporting cast. Yeah. And
it definitely makes me want, just talking about it right now makes me want to watch it again, because Bedelia, Ed Harris, Walsh, and of course Max von Sydow. And I'm trying to think about who else is in that film.
It's who's the woman from Pulp Fiction that any of you fucking pricks move?
Amanda Plummer, yeah. Christopher Plummer's daughter, yeah.
She's great in it.
Yeah. Always great. Always.
Yeah. So this is that kind of movie. Fred Willard, what the fuck was he in?
Oh, he was in everything. I mean, if you've ever seen Best in Show, he in a film that is filled with great comic performances. Fred Willard delivers one of the greatest comic performances ever. Basically, I think they compared him to a Joe Garagiola sports commentator commentating on a Westminster Dog Club tournament, and it's hilarious. And it is. He did a show with Martin Mull back in the 70s called Fernwood Tonight. I mean, just great comic actors that came out of the Second City tradition, and they came out of Second City.
He did stuff too, right? Because
he was in Spinal Tap.
Right?
I think I can't remember what he is in Spinal Tap. I think he's a record executive or something like that. But yeah, he's in that. I mean, he's just another one of these character. Just you've seen him in so much. You've seen him in so much, but never a starring role, such that he just blends into the makeup of movies, where you're like, oh fuck. When I saw him in this, I was like, oh wow. And young. That's crazy to see him as young as he is in this film. And but really selling it, because it looked to me like Dzunza might have been pulling the Sean Penn, I gotta load in this shotgun. I'm gonna scare the fuck out of you. I mean, and Dzunza looked so crazed in it that it was a very tense scene. To go back to something that you said earlier, I think one of the things in this movie, number one, they tried to do this as a theatrical film. They tried to do it in a 2-hour thing, but nobody could shape the material. The book is 400 and some odd pages. Nobody could cut it down. Nobody could fit it into what a theatrical film could be, 2 hours or less. And it was one of the earliest examples of them saying, well, some producer got it in his head, this should be a miniseries. Which is weird because it's only a 2-part miniseries, and for the most part, The Winds of War, War and Remembrance, some of the other ones that we grew up on, you mentioned Shogun and the Thornbirds. These were all like 6 or 7 episodes, if I remember correctly. Yeah, they were like huge, and this was like 1 week, one Sunday, and then the following Sunday. So it was like a 2-part movie that they did, and I think it really benefits because one of the things that really sells the movie is that Tobe Hooper isn't forced to get to the violence or get to the scare. It's really allowed to just kind of hang on there, almost Leone-esque in building the tension until when it finally delivers, you do make that jump. So they are actual jump scares where I'm like, oh, I move back and up and back and to the left, and I'm like, oh shit, and it's I cannot say enough. I cannot sing enough praise for this movie, partly because I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it is, but also because genuinely it's a really well directed, such to the point that when I start thinking about it, I find problems with it that don't matter to me. For example, the Barlow character, this Lord Vampire, plays a very minimal part in it, and it's not so much David Soul and this kid fighting this vampire, which is the ultimate resolution, but it's really about the disintegration of the town and the town going crazy. Jeffrey Lewis's character as the caretaker of the cemetery, and he's great in it. And
that's Juliette Lewis's dad.
That's Juliette Lewis's dad. That's
we've seen him in shit.
We'd seen him. I mean, he made a career out of supporting roles in Clint Eastwood films. Any Which Way You Can, Any Which Way But Loose. I mean, this guy showed up all over the 1970s in both television and movies. He's wonderful in it, and when he starts to, I like the direction they went with the vampirism being a sickness, that like a virus that infects you and then overcomes your body. I like the way that played out. Some movies do it, some movies don't do it. This is definitely one that wins with that angle. But like for me, the best casting for me, and I'm not sure if you're aware of it, it's an inside joke, but you have Elisha Cook Jr., great character actor. You saw him as the weaselly little guy in The Maltese Falcon that for the time, Bogart basically calls him a fag. That was the 1940s, I mean, they came about as close to being able to say it as they could. That's weak. You saw him again in Blackula as the hospital intern, but he's the town drunk in this film. But his wife in the film, or the woman that runs that boarding house, that's Marie Windsor. I don't know if it was Marie or Mary. I think it was Marie Windsor. I believe it was Windsor. And he and she played a married couple in Stanley Kubrick's The Killing.
Oh.
So that was like a little cinematic in-joke on the producer's part, where
is that his first movie?
What, Elijah Cook? No, he had already...
Kubrick. Was that Kubrick's first movie? Is that
that was his first popular film? That was like his second film. I mean, I think it was Fear and Desire. Killer's Kiss and then Fear and Desire. One of them never got released, or one of them Kubrick tried to bury.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
yeah.
But I think this was like the third official film, and so it's those two, and she's very loving and kind of nosy in this film.
Yeah.
But she's horrible in that first film. She's just a horrible human being, and he's such a cuck and such a weak little man. And I love it. I love the way that plays out. If you've never seen The Killing, you really owe it to yourself to sit down and watch that film, because it's so good. And to see the two of them, and I remember watching it going, I know who she is. I mean, with him, he was a little old man when he was in his 20s. That's basically what he looked like when he was a young man. But with her, I was looking at her, I was like, I know who she is, but I can't place it. And I had just seen The Narrow Margin about 3 or 4 days earlier, which is it's a film noir set on a train where a cop is supposed to be protecting a witness, and Marie Windsor plays the witness, or that's what you're led to believe. If you've never seen that film, she's horrible in that film too. She just played these. She played low rent femme fatales, and what I mean by that is like if you like Barbara Stanwyck is the high end femme fatale,
right?
Mary Windsor was the low end.
She's like a B-side Joan Crawford.
Yes, and I loved her. Oh, she's great. She had these weird eyes, and she just big eyes, and
like
just
blackest eyes.
Oh yeah, like a doll's eyes. She's just like, But I just love. Whenever I saw her, I loved her. She was, which says a lot about my taste in women. And
yeah, she's the B-side of Joan Crawford.
I love the evilness there. I love she's just a fucking horrible human being, and I can't wait to make her mine. She's just fix her. I love it. So there's that.
A lot, man.
It's just so good. I love that. I love the way that played out. And it's weird because there are characters in this movie that they just disappear. Like Elijah Cook Jr., he just disappears. You don't know what happened. Did I miss something? He just disappears, right? And then George DeZunza and the wife, they drive, I guess they're driving out of town, her with a black eye. They just disappear, right?
Oh, yeah.
But my favorite part is the sheriff.
Oh, yeah.
Constable. There's so much about this film that the film itself just works on a lot of different levels, because I think it's honest. Number one, I think it's honest about how a town would react if they started to realize that this kind of thing was going on. Like, there's that moment where the doctor is Bonnie Bedelia's father.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor, what the hell's his name?
I don't remember.
Dr. Norton. Dr. Norton. She's Susan. That's Ed Flanders. And if you remember the 1980s, you remember a series called St. Elsewhere.
Oh, about the hospital, right?
Yeah. Denzel Washington got a start on that. Howie Mandel, a lot of people that would go on to bigger things. And I think he was the chief of surgeons, or he was the chief of staff, but he had a certain kind of a strength of character. And to see him in an early version of that with the worst wig that I've ever seen on TV. I mean, really, what the fuck were they thinking with that thing? But I love the way they play out. And see, that was kind of the thing that made me wonder about the James Mason character. You say becoming, because he had strength, right? James Mason character
did. Yeah.
Because he picks him up and he carries him across a fucking stairwell.
Right.
I mean, and he doesn't go down easy with the gun shot. It just, I know.
I mean, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm just marveling at how much this movie is so much fun. And I know
that's the thing. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that because it's weird because I'm saying this movie is so much fun and there's a lot of people out there like, yeah, motherfucker, if you had watched it 20, 30 years ago when you were supposed to, 40 years ago when you were supposed to on one of its many reruns, you would have known this. But here I am 50 years and 40 years after the fact and I'm just finding it.
I mean, but that's cool.
Yeah. Well, you're lucky that you get rewarded like that later in life because I can't say that I've had this much fun in a movie in a long time.
Otherwise, you'd just be some cynical old asshole in Arizona, fucking having seen it all, thinking he's seen it all, and being like, fuck this.
Fuck this.
This other fucking noir was better. I mean, that's the thing about the vampire mythos is that everything is up for grabs. We've been talking about this shit. And I'm very interested in why certain vampire films or books, or sometimes both. I mean, obviously, for example, Dracula, the book, it's not the first appearance of a vampire in literature, but it's the one that stuck. It's the one that went over. And then the Todd Browning film, almost a little bit more than 30 years later, Dracula's late 1890s. Todd Browning's film is early 1930s. It's like 31. That's the one that set the template. That's the template. That's the vampire of the 20th century.
Yeah, basically all vampire movies are in debt to Todd Browning.
Yes, and Bela Lugosi.
Yeah,
and either they're going to, I mean, for example, not all of them, because you can technically say,
well, no, like I Am Legend, but okay.
Like for example, Nosferatu is in debt to the book because it's a plagiarized version of the book, and so it splits off and it turns. It kind of sets up its own, like, if you look at it as a family tree, you have. For the next episode, when we do something else, I'll go further back into before Dracula, the book, Bram Stoker's book, Dracula. Sure. But for now, let's start with that. You can go down to Nosferatu, which creates a monster. It has more occult elements based on what's written on the papers. It's and that lineage goes Nosferatu with Max Schreck, 1922, to the Herzog remake in the late 70s, the same year as this.
Yeah. Herzog was 79. Okay.
Yeah. So you have this film, 79. Well, this miniseries. You have Herzog, 79 or thereabouts. Later on, Shadow of the Vampire. We'll talk about that.
Then Eggers' film earlier
just came out last year or the year before, whatever. I think it was last year.
We can't even remember. Wow, which where our minds are now.
Which is now the Nosferatu lineage, but Eggers kind of ties it back to Bram Stoker's Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Coppola more than yeah.
But it's still kind of Count Orlok,
sure,
as well. The Dracula book goes to, if you jump over Nosferatu and think of like Todd Browning's film as a sibling of Nosferatu, it's not a son of it; it's its brother. That leads into all the Hammer films, Christopher Lee, all the other remakes with Frank Langella and all these other people who have played Dracula, up until you get Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1992. It's all been this seduction, nobility, following that template. The next real big thing, the form of media that I think changed its approach to the vampire is I Am Legend. Super influential book, Last Man on Earth type of premise, influences like even zombie film, not the movie, the book, because that's super generationally. It's a book. It's a boomer. It's a baby boomer Cold War metaphor. It's being holed up in your home, basically in a bunker, not knowing if and when you can go outside. It influences these, what is it, the Soylent Green. It influenced these kind of stories about one person left.
Mm-hmm.
To a certain extent, it influences Night of the Living Dead. After that, the next big form of media that changes it is Anne Rice. It's Interview with the Vampire in the mid-70s. She's writing. This is published around the same time that that Salem's Lot, the book, is published. Her book. Two different approaches. We talked about this. Hers flips it, and now you get this other kind of like lineage of vampires that are now dealing with the fact that they're vampires. It's not, this is a monster. It's not, this is a monster who is seductive, we still have that because we still have those influences. But now it's, I'm a monster, but I'm still going to do this. But I'm also being seduced by other vampires. And I'm a vampire. And I'm seducing humans. And I'm killing humans. And this sucks. And then it has the homoerotic element to it. It has the element of, oh, I'm a child vampire. This fucking sucks. Which later on we'll see with elements of that in Near Dark. So Only Lovers Left Alive, Humanist Vampire, which we talked about. All of those movies come from the idea of Anne Rice, her book. And in the 90s, when the film comes out, it's really picked up by Gen X. And it's, if we were going decade by decade, Lost Boys would probably be like we could argue it. We could do a series at some point where we go over the decade and argue with each other about what is the film, each vampire film of the decade, which might be fun at some point to do.
Yeah, we could do that.
Lost Boys is probably interesting generational contender for the 80s, but in terms of if we were to take just Gen X in general, that period between the late 60s, people born between the late 60s and the early 80s, I would definitely put Interview as one of the ones that really hit the pop cultural kind of like, from the book to the movie. I think it really like is one of the central pieces. And it flipped the script. It changed the game. And then after that, Twilight, unfortunately, just kind of is one that, for whatever reason, just captured the imagination of and turned the vampire into something different.
Not for whatever reason. I think it's very calculated when you appeal to teenage angst and because that's the audience. But
it's teenage angst for a different generation than the previous ones.
Yeah, but it's a pretty teenage angst because Humanist Vampire is a teenage angst film, but it doesn't appeal in the way that that Twilight does. You don't have the beautiful people in it. You don't have that kind of. There's a sense of this is who I want to be, and they understand me because they're depressed and they're confused in the same way that I am, although they're beautiful. You don't get that with humanist vampire. I mean, a lot of what cinema is, the appeal of what cinema is, in part, is being able to project yourself onto something that you're seeing on screen. That's we all want to be a kung fu fighter. We all want to be James Bond. You know, I mean, I don't know how many times I've imagined myself slow motion shooting up a place, like Chow Yun.
I don't know if I don't know if you want to admit that.
You know what I'm talking about, though. That kid in you that wants to swing in. Yeah, not the real, you know, not the 50-year-old man that wants to just say, hey, motherfuckers must die. I'm talking about the kid where death isn't a real concept.
It's not real. Yeah,
it's the beauty of the slow motion. And it's the beauty of, and that's the thing about cinema, is that it creates this magnificent world that we can lose ourselves in and become the hero. The hero usually figures it out by the end, regardless if by the beginning of the next movie in the series, he's fucked up again. He figured it out that won. So part of it is, it's the quintessential having your cake and eating it too, in a very obvious and very narrow way of looking at it. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Twilight is it's the millennial.
Yeah,
it's the millennial vampire. And it's the fan fiction of fucking the gray 50 Shades, and there's an inspirational like relationship there, and there's this love triangle between the werewolves and the you know, it's its own thing. But in all of that genealogy, Salem's Lot is, although it's in line with the way that the creature looks in terms of, again, I haven't read the book, but in terms of the film, it's in the Nosferatu column.
Sure.
Just based on that.
Oh, he's definitely Shrek in this, Max Shrek.
And it's closer in terms of kind of the tone, closer to I Am Legend, in that not because it's one person alone in the community, or alone in the town, with the exception of these vampires that come out as all do in the night, but they're their own type. It's like every person is alone in that town while the people are out during the day. And it's still this idea of, well, the monster is now landing on the shores of America. It's not London or whatever. And literally in this film, James Mason leaves instructions that he's like, okay, there's going to be a shipment, and you guys need to deliver this crate and take it down into the cellar, and then leave the keys inside, but lock the door from the outside. There are 4 padlocks. Do this, do this, do this. Follow these instructions. And you could take it as it would be interesting to look at, like, was at this point in the 70s, is there a spike in immigration? It's built into the Dracula story itself is xenophobia. This thing is coming from over there, from the east, or from, whatever. And now all America is being turned. This Nina Orbach's book talks about AIDS, because obviously there's the blood metaphor in that, which comes to if you're going to examine something as rich with metaphorical possibilities as the vampire, like, obviously in a timeline, you're going to look at AIDS and you're going to see like how does that fit in, or how can you apply that, or touch, or whatever. The same thing is going to happen when you look at. I mean, look at that remake of Body Snatchers. Is what year is that? That's got to be late 70s too.
Yeah, 77, 78, somewhere around there.
This idea of who the fuck do we trust? This idea of fucking anyone's. You could, if had this been in the 50s. I mean, the original one is communism, right? It's people can be turned. Who the House Un-American Activities Committee? Everyone's blaming each other. It's that type of thing. Again, it's the thing. You don't even know if you've been infected at that point, which also goes back to the AIDS thing. What Tobe Hooper did based on Stephen King is really doing a snapshot of that particular time, but even if you zoom out of it, this sense of small town America's fear of anything that deviates from what it thinks it knows it is.
That's a good point.
And we're even still reverberating. I mean, that's a constant fucking thing. Is like, well, these fucking things are gonna eat your pets. They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. And then there's a moment in this film where the dog dies, and if we've talked about this too, if a dog dies in the movie, that's no matter what else happens in the fucking movie, that's the fuck where you're like, oh,
yep. Went too far.
They turned the corner. They turned the fucking corner. Jaws, we went to go see it a few weeks ago because of the anniversary on the big screen. And there's a scene where there's a dog by the water, and the question was like, well, the dog, like some people were saying, well, the dog dies, but you never see the dog die. You either see everyone die on screen, or you see the after effects of their death on the screen. The dog, I believe the dog is there to make you worry more, because they're fucking with your emotions.
But you also notice he's smart enough, even in 77 or where 76, not to show that dog being eaten. He shows that kid being eaten.
Right. For sure. And Spielberg, I'm not going to say knowing Spielberg because I don't know Spielberg, but I don't think that, I don't think the dog dies. The kid dies.
Yeah.
I know in Jurassic Park that fucking goat dies, but I don't think the dog dies in Jaws. But we're moving away. But the point is that, like, while Salem's Lot isn't this super, I think, game changer for the vampire genre, I do think that it is one of those. It doesn't really go there in the way that, or it doesn't lend itself to that the way that Night of the Living Dead does, where it's like, oh, by the time you get to the end, you can really either impose or extract all of this political meaning onto it. It does reflect any country, but particularly, and James Mason's character does say that, like, oh, any small towns around the world, like, are suspicious of outsiders. It really does show, like, this kind of American sense of being insular and feel fearful of the other, while at the same time having this obsession with the potential evil that's homegrown. Because the main character isn't there because he's worried that he heard someone from another country came and it's going to start all this trouble. He's there because of what happened there from before.
Yeah.
When he was, like, even from before when he was there.
Well, an inherent evil that he remembers.
Yeah.
He has that conversation. Can a building be evil? Can it, from its building, from its very foundation?
Right.
Crazy.
And if we're talking about the nation, and something being evil from its very foundation, what does that say about some people are going to look at our culture and our society with a suspicion and say, this shit is fucking rotten, like it's been rotten to the fucking core. These are just new layers of rot that we're worried about, but the very fabric of it is fucked and haunted by something that some of us remember and some of us don't. Or some of us try to forget.
Or some of us acknowledge and some of us don't.
Some of us acknowledge and some of us ignore, right. And so, I mean, like, it doesn't go there. But I looked at the trailer of the new version of Salem's Lot, and I think it's a more diverse cast.
More diverse country now.
Ethnically diverse.
Yeah.
So I would be curious to see if any of that is kind of, again, not having read the book, I don't know if that's in there. I don't know, and in this analysis of it, I didn't come across any of that. So I would be curious to see, like, what, if anything, it has to do with if race comes up, if that element of suspicion comes into it.
I doubt it. I mean, from the way I see things, they never really address race. They just equalize it. They level it out by having these characters in it, but they don't address it. I can't name. There's only been a handful of films that have actually taken a look at that have added diversity to it and addressed it in such a way as to do it in a way in which it actually looks at the inclusion of different cultures and how that affects the storyline. The majority of films that are shown today have people living amongst each other with not a care in the world, where none of this plays into it, where the history, I mean, that's the way, that's my perception on the way things get made.
To be fair, I mean, like, I think at its best, you're going to just see a film or a story with different characters, and they don't have to say, like, you're black. Cool. Obviously not, because it's just kind of like, okay, we're past all of it.
Okay. I'll give you an example. I'm not looking for that. What I'm looking for, there's a movie that George Clooney directed about 7-8 years ago called Suburbicon. I think it's called Suburbicon. Mm-hmm. And it's about a neighborhood. And he got a lot of shit for making this movie, and I'll talk about why. But It opens with a black family moving into a neighborhood. And the mailman goes and, assumes that the woman moving in is a maid. She's like, no, this is my house. Mm-hmm. And then there's the confusion, and he goes through the neighborhood, and he basically is saying, do you know you have black people moving into your neighborhood? And it's all this uproar, but it's never really addressed. You never get to really meet these neighbors, because their background to the real story that's being told, which is there's a marriage. I think Matt Damon's character kills his wife. I can't remember. But the neighborhood is so consumed by this black family moving in that nobody gives a shit about about this white man killing his wife.
Right. I mean, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and it's just a story that's told. It's never like, oh, thank God that these Negroes have moved in and they're carrying the weight of all these troubles, or it just presents it as a part of the story that's playing out. And I saw a lot of reviews of the film and online shit where it's like, oh, here we go again. The story should be about a black family moving in and the struggles that they're having. And I'm like, that's not the point of what the film is trying to make. I mean, there's a story there as well, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think this is a more powerful story in the way it's playing out, because it's showing how a community will ignore what's happening in front of them so that they can use race as a means of baiting each other and causing hostility. Yeah, and the privilege. Yeah, I thought it was an excellent film. I hope that we can sit down and talk about it one day, because it's definitely along the lines of something that you and I, or at least I definitely feel that I think you would as well, but I can't speak for you. I can speak for me. I love the idea of how fucked up it is, and I love the honesty of that level of exposing culture. I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking specifically about within the context of a community, a story where there's a community where people are all suspicious of one another, and they're also suspicious, particularly in the same way that you're talking of anyone who's new, who's from the outside.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know if, based on what I saw, because it was kind of like a half-ass kind of glancing view at the trailer, which deserves better, I guess. I think I saw like a black kid, so I'm like, oh, is that like the kid who's into horror? So like, would it be, this is just me running with it, that they're already part of this community, and then this other outsider comes in, and those who are already part of this community still view others as suspicious? Well, they acknowledge and understand within themselves that they're viewed with suspicion, even though they're there already. You know what I mean? And does the kid who's all into the monster stuff, is there a connection with he himself feeling like othered, even if there's no outward, outward show of that? You know what I mean? Like, is it just something that's just part of the character, and it's like Hemingway's iceberg? Like, there's a lot of shit you don't show, but it's the idea is under the water. It's just one of those things. I'm not asking for, like, I forget which Star Wars film it was of the newer, I think it's from the newer series. Yeah. Whatever the newer 3, where it's like these two female characters kiss, and it looked, we talked about this, and I made this point, that it looked like they were really focused on that moment in such a way that it looked performative, versus just like being just a moment that is so normal that you don't have to focus on it. Because if you're that open to just people doing their thing, then you don't need to say, oh my God, look, isn't this so amazing? Because it's just kind of like, okay, cool, like they're doing their thing, fucking like, stop, you know? It's not that big a deal. It's only a big deal if you are, I get this, the counterpoint would be like, well, you have to celebrate it in order to counter the fucking attacks against it. I just feel that Hollywood itself is so cynical that at that point it's not even a celebration. It's just it's like taking a stand, but from a strategic kind of like performative place. That's what it looks like to me. So yeah, going again, I don't want a film that's gonna be like, we're gonna have a fucking multicultural potluck, and everyone's gonna come and bring in their like their ethnic foods, and we're all gonna celebrate that. Like, I'm not interested in that. I would prefer it to be like, okay, when we watch John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson in the car, these are just two dudes who are cool with each other, fucking just talking, and and we know later on it's like, oh, my man from Inglewood, okay, my man from wherever the fuck John Travolta's character is, I forgot. But you know what I mean, Ventura or wherever the fuck he's from. So sure, but I'm going back. It's like, yeah, this kind of film, this kind of story that is very those towns. And if you've been to a small town anywhere, there is this idea of like people looking out the window.
Yeah. Who is that?
People, yeah. I mean, and like, I don't live in a small town, but if someone parks in front of the house and it's a different car, like the fucking dog goes to the window and I go to the window and you know what I mean? Like, who the fuck is that?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you can imagine if everyone knows each other, and now it's like, oh, or the town where, if it's like the town where my mom is from, it's like you basically identify yourself as like, oh, I'm this person's son. And then that tells you, like Leslie and I we went to New Orleans, and I was a little bit kind of like, we went on a bayou boat, and it was like, how far is this place that we're going? Where the fuck are we going? Why are we leaving? Like, it just, you have suspicion on both sides, right? And yeah, the dude who took us on the boat was like, he's like, yeah, this is just kind of one of those places where, sometimes people look at each other, but they just want to know who their parents are. And I was just like, yeah, right. And then you're going down that fucking bayou boat tour and passing by these like homes with the Confederate flag, you know what I mean? And you're going like, get me the fuck back to fucking the French Quarter, motherfucker,
Yeah.
Take me where the vampires are, where I know what awaits me, So this is definitely one of those places that it's kind of like, it's just fucking scary as it is. That old house, it looks like one of those old fucking houses.
It does. And then when you get inside, it doesn't disappoint.
Oh, it's fucking gross. And that's a connection. That's like where Tobe Hooper brings in the elements of the House of Horrors from Chainsaw.
Yeah. Definitely.
And it's not only is it grimy, but it's like, it almost feels like it's alive with algae and fucking goo and shit like that. And it's like fuck. Like there's a series on, I don't know if it's Netflix or what, but it's about like crimes in different places, and there's like an LA segment or whatever, and it talks about Phil Spector when he committed that murder against I think her name was Lana Clarkson.
Yeah.
And they talk about how, he had this like castle mansion in fucking Monterey Park, which was like weird, in the suburb on the opposite side of where you think you would have it, because it's on the east side. And they said like, yeah, that his house was fucking gross, and that there were like rats and roaches and all this shit. And
kind of like a Miss Havisham thing.
What is that?
That's the lady from Great Expectations.
Miss Havisham.
Wasn't that her name?
I don't remember.
Great Expectations, where that old woman.
Yeah, I know.
Who was
yeah. I don't know if that's. I don't know.
But she lived in that house it was basically the same as when she got stood up at her wedding. She's wearing the fucking wedding dress and the wedding cake is there, and it's just, yeah.
That I think that's more along the lines of I'm blanking out on something else now, of Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah.
Something,
Glorious,
you know what I mean?
character,
Something more like a Lost in Time.
Sure.
This sounded more like Grey Gardens.
Got to see that.
Those two women that were related to
Big and Little Edie.
I'm sorry?
Aren't they named Big and Little Edie?
Yeah, something like that. I don't remember exactly.
Crazy like that, yeah.
Yeah. This idea of like one detective is like, I don't he's like, yeah, you'd go into a room and he's like, yeah, I don't think he's been in this room for like 6 years. Like that.
Yeah.
And the Marston house just looks like
well, immediately being on that hill, first thing I thought of was the Psycho house. I thought of the Norman Bates house.
For sure.
So it's it's connected to a history of cinematic horror,
scary houses. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's like House on the Hill. It's fucking Psycho. It's all of those, all of that. And it just looks like when something's wet and it starts to grow like moss and algae. The whole house looks like a pool that doesn't have chlorine anymore.
Yeah, it did. That's crazy.
And you can imagine the fucking smell, and it has an upstairs, but it also has it has that cellar. And once they go down in there and they pull out that coffin, you see all these other vampires that are like sleeping around it, and they start to crawl. And I wasn't expecting I guess I'd forgotten the end because I wasn't expecting the book ending of
the Guatemala,
because and then I was like, oh shit, where's that? It made me curious where that little town is, and so I'm gonna have to look that up. But if it exists, and I had forgotten about the Bonnie Bedelia, like, yeah, she comes back, and then there's this kind of like we can be together, like, kiss me. And then he asked the Jon Snow ass,
Very necessary.
Yeah.
But I like the bleakness of it. I like that they went there with it, and this idea that they were going to always be on the run, that these vampires were always going to be chasing them, that they're turning into vampire hunters, and that's their job now for the rest of this life. I mean, I thought it was, you could do a lot with that. I mean, you could make a decent sequel out of that idea.
For sure. I mean, and they run into Linda Hamilton's character, and then now they're on the run from it all. You know what I mean? The Terminator vampire in that Jeep. It's a fun one that has potential to go even deeper. They didn't. I don't feel that it was like missing, but I think that like the stuff is there. It makes me want to read the book. It makes me want to be creeped out by it, to feel what is this like, what's happening, what's going on here. So I'm it makes you want to return, like as you said, to needful things.
Yeah. I think that's one of the best things that you could say about a literary adaptation is that when it makes you want to read the source material, and in this case, it makes you want to investigate and go back to the related material. And Spielberg King is a wealth of that. So
yeah, this is his I think it's his second book.
Second published right after Carrie?
Yeah, right after Carrie, right before The Shining.
Wow. And then he never stopped. God bless cocaine.
It never fucking stopped. Yeah. And for Hooper, it's this is pre-Poltergeist.
Yeah.
So he would return to this idea of told in a much different way. Poltergeist was way more pop culture, way more, still creepy, but more lighthearted. With also this idea of what's beneath this town. I mean, Chainsaw. There's a through line there between Chainsaw, this film, and Poltergeist.
Absolutely.
This community, this like the history there, and people going back. These outsiders are coming back to this place, and it's kind of like, well, you shouldn't have fucking come here because you came to the wrong place. Like, you came to the right place, but you came to the fucking wrong place. Because that fucking Texas Chainsaw Massacre house it's their neighbor.
Yeah, it definitely is.
And Poltergeist, it's, you know, that whole idea of the Indian burial ground and the supposedly these indigenous spirits are going to take revenge, but it's like, well, that's
no, that's something else. I don't think it was it's Poltergeist. Go back to it. Poltergeist was a regular graveyard. It was a regular white America.
Over? Is that what it is? That they fucked over the
No, it was that they were too cheap to move the graveyard. They moved the stones.
Just built right over it.
Yeah, they just built right on top of it, which is kind of stupid because you can't lay plumbing like that, but you ignore it it makes for a fun story. It makes for a fun story. That's why the bodies start coming out of the pool.
And you don't put it past them.
Oh, if they could do it, they would. Don't get the fuck out of here. To save a couple of $1,000, of course they would. They're motherless fucks. Yeah. There's no doubt. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, and I have to go back because I don't know why I was connecting it to this idea of
because the mythology of that story has always been Native American burial grounds, because that's number one, that has happened so often. Sure, yeah. I mean, the whole fucking country.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
is and I mean, and built into that, like, there is some kind of mechanism of guilt, going on, with that. With, it's like, well, what has been covered over, like, whether it's just psychological or like the idea of the shadow, like what you try to suppress. Mm-hmm. Well, there's what you suppress is like you're actively like, okay, I'm gonna tamp down, but what you repress is like you don't even know you're covering it, or you're not looking at it at all, and it's going to emerge. And that's even like the Babadook and shit like that. And that kind of even goes back further into like folk horror traditions, and Stephen King is kind of like there's a version of that, of the American folk horror tradition with Children of the Corn and shit like that, where it's like it's coming from, whether it's a burial ground or it's a farmland or crops or whatever, it's like of the earth. And Poltergeist isn't like from that, but it's like Pet Cemetery. There are parallels and shit like that. And as you said, the mythology kind of, it all bleeds into each other. And this idea of like the all-American horror. And the tradition, I mean, even like the slasher shit it's all like small towns.
Yeah.
It's all small town shit. It's all America. It's fucking, even Freddy. I mean, Freddy was like from there.
Do you remember something that Soul said near the end of the movie where he was talking to the doctor and was there's something about you this place is small, unassuming, inbred. I think that's you didn't hear that. Oh yeah.
Well, I'm sure I heard it, but I think this is an interesting too. Is like,
well, Flanders said, "Why this place?" I don't know, because you're small, secluded. You mind your own business. You're so inbred, to a degree. That line stuck with me. The inbred thing really stuck with me because, and you talking about it now really it amplifies it for me as far as meaning. I laughed at it as an insult. Now I look at it as more than simply that.
For sure. I mean, and like, and there are definitely like, I think of like, like my mom's town, like there's like, and there are other towns around it, and it's like one town, if people can marry people from this other town, then it's seen as like a move up. If they marry people from this other town, it's seen as a move down. So there's this hierarchical relationship, and there's kind of like, there's a way that these families weave in and out of each other in order to avoid literal inbreeding, right? But eventually it's kind of like, well, it's this like lattice, it's this like matrix of fucking relationships, and then you have your small town stories of like, oh, the murder of this, and that's how you start to develop all this folklore, and then you get to feel that a place just has a bad fucking vibe because for every bad thing that happens at a place, anytime a new bad thing happens, it's like added to it, and then you're like, now this place just has that energy. And these types of films and this kind of American horror, that's the kind of thing that the American horror story idea is built on. And it's like, well, New Orleans, and you take all of that stuff, you go to New Orleans and you have the vampire Anne Rice shit, you have the other vampire stories that are before her, and you have slavery, you have voodoo, you have all this other, and it's like New Orleans and the food and the music itself, it's this mixture of all these different traditions that are utterly unique in that place. And it's its own fucking thing with its own fucking scary, cool, seductive, enchanting vibe. You know what I mean? Like New Orleans, there's no other fucking place in the world like New Orleans. Then there's other towns where you're like, oh, this is kind of like a stand-in for any other little fucking town.
Yeah.
And it's still fucking scary. Where it's just like, let's just get gas and fucking, like, I don't want to, like, we're not eating here. We're not, no, none of it.
Yeah, let's not let the sun come down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's totally fucking Robert Johnson fucking, like, you don't want that. And there are places like that in California. There are places like that.
Definitely places like that here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been through places where it's like, yeah, this is not my California. And I'm good. You know what I mean? So definitely a lot within this film to chew on, a lot within the tradition, with a lot. It expands all over the horror. So visit, revisit, sit with it. it fucking it escalates very quickly. Once it does, it does. And then there are elements of it that are cartoonish. But it's all part of it's all part of the ride. And, you buy the ticket, you take that fucking ride. buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. Whatever you can do just to keep our tradition going, and if you want to be a part of it. $5 here, $5 there. Doesn't have to be a lot. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to do this. If you want to be a member, cool. $5 a month. You can go as low as that. Fucking just to keep the archive, 10 years of episodes, practically on a weekly basis. 10 years of episodes, 500 plus episodes that we've done. If you can help us maintain that, so you can have constant access to it. We don't do paywalls. We don't do any of that bullshit. You want to help us out? That'll help us out. Dig into those fucking archives. Explore all of that. That haunted earth, explore it. It's there. Help us out. Thank you. This episode goes to Ellen Landberg, Salem's Lot, 2025. Vampire Hour, Vampire Month, midnight, good night, good luck, goodbye.